Still on the show now, so the Independent National Electoral Commission has raised the alarm that some politicians are buying permanent voter cards and financially inducing unsuspecting voters to harvest their voter identification numbers ahead of the 2023 elections. And INEC National Commissioner overseeing the FCT, Nasarawa, Kaduna and Plateau states, Mohammed Haruna, who raised this alarm, disclosed that 2 people were recently convicted for illegal possession of PVCs in Sokoto and Kano states. The big question on the lips of Nigerians is how politicians plan to use the PVCs, since each bears the biometrics of the owner. We have joining us now in the studio lawyer and public affairs analyst Jide Ologun. It's good to see you again. Welcome.
Thank you
to the show. And that is even how I want to, start the issue of, is it even possible? Well, INEC has said there is no use. This issue of buying and selling of PVCs, goes to a no issue at all, because you cannot even, you'll be arrested once you get to the polling unit with this controversial or questionable cards.
By the provisions of the law, it should be a difficult thing to perpetrate. But then, are we ruling out compromises from even the key players? Because we are talking of electronic verification here.
Yes.
You have issue of thumbprints, but then these things can be circumvented. And what I know is that we have a very strong law under the Electoral Act 2022 as amended. If you look specifically at Section 117, that even stipulates that on conviction, you either pay ₦1 million or 12 months in prison, or both. And like it was reported, 2 persons have been jailed, convicted in Sokoto and Kano State. And let's lay a foundation. Vote buying is corruption. If you look at Section 4 of the Nigerian Constitution as amended, it says that the National Assembly shall make laws for the peace, orderliness, and good governance of Nigeria. And in Section 153, INEC was created to carry out credible elections, monitor the politicians, even monitor their expenses, ensure that we have credible elections. And you go to Section 15, subsection 5, it says that the state shall abolish corrupt practices and abuse of office. So when you find these corrupt practices, we have law enforcement agencies that should, sanction such. But is that the narrative in Nigeria? You see, vote buying is a global concept, and it's been on for long. And from one of the reports of the electoral commissioners in the country, Australia introduced the secret ballot system as far back as 1856, just to checkmate vote buying. Then the UK in 1872, then America in 1892, you see. But having said all this, we should be concerned about why politicians are desperate.
That's it.
About vote buying, and why electors also are so gullible to sell their votes. Because it's not just about harvesting the voters' identification number. There are different approaches. You can give a guarantee that, okay, show me, let me have a proof that you have voted for my party. Then after, walk to a corner, collect your money, and go. So why are they desperate? Do we have a strong system in place? Then are we losing the culture of accountability and transparency? Do we want good governance in this nation? Recall that the 1993 election of MKO Abiola, Hope 93, was even option A for open ballot system. People had to queue behind the impressions of their candidates. And I doubt if there was any report of vote buying. But here we are today, from almost all the primaries that were prominent recently, there were allegations of vote buying, even in foreign currency. So to what extent are we prepared to implement our laws? We have laws in the land that frown at these foul practices. But to what extent?
Right.
So, because that's the same question I was asking myself when I sat here. Why are politicians, as it's been reported, hell-bent on, buying votes when, if you are popular and you know that you have done the needful, you shouldn't go that route, one would expect. Well, why do we keep seeing, them trying to beat the system? Yes, nothing is foolproof, but why do we keep having this reoccurring? Are the electorates giving them the room to keep, going on with this practice? What is the missing link? What is the issue itself?
Let me tie it to the saying of a wise man that in life, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. So for an average politician, you take nothing for granted. Look at the primaries, some of the primaries that we witnessed. In fact, some are still bitter coming out of those primaries because calculations went wrong. Some even got their ticket out of desperation. So if we have an environment where the succession plan is reliable, then you may not have all this. Then when we have a political environment where it's not for enriching the politicians, but serving the people, we may not have issues like this. There was an election in Germany, the whole elections in the UK, and these are issues. We need to tame that environment. Do you know that INEC even has a responsibility to monitor the expenditure of the political parties,
yes,
examine their books, publish the reports to the world? But do we have all these issues? And are we not in a situation where you are now asking the cat to monitor the affairs of the tiger? Who has stronger muzzle, the cat or the tiger? Because you see the key players flouting the laws, the provisions of the Electoral Act. And if there are no consequences, then how do you make the laws effective? So, by and large, I think the desperation we have in that environment may be tied to the fact that it has become a high-yield sector of our national life.
Two things for me. Okay, so you've already, preempted the question I wanted to ask. The fact that, is this an issue of INEC crying foul, as, some stakeholders have posited? Can they just do their work in monitoring the system, exposing? So they say two people, have been nabbed, or so to speak. So can they just do more? And then the issue of the voters now, perhaps the bigger issue should not even be on the politicians who want to buy, but on the voter who wants to sell, who despite all that has been said about your vote being your right, you still see selling your vote as a better option, so to speak. How do we deal with that psyche of, this crop of Nigerians?
In the criminal justice ecosystem, you have three core elements. You have thorough investigation, you have diligent prosecution, and you have a committed judiciary. So before you even convict, and under our constitution, the defendant, you used to call them accused, is presumed innocent until the case is proved beyond all reasonable doubt. So that value chain itself is cumbersome. And that is why some may not be so afraid of the system. So before you even convict, and where there are no consequences, you may not be able to prevent subsequent breaches. And I'm not holding brief for poverty, but poverty is a very strong weapon. You see, we are in a situation where a bag of rice may be 50,000 naira now. And you are talking of electorates who have been adjusted to appreciate stomach infrastructure. And these are, minds that find it difficult to make ends meet, like people say. And some politicians are coming to say, okay, all I need to... In fact, some, for 3,000 naira, they will surrender their voter's card, surrender their vote. So, and one of the responsibilities of INEC also is to orientate the people. But in orientating the people also, you need people of sound mind. Poverty distorts the mind of a human being. And right now, reportedly, about 153, is it 53 or 133?
133
million Nigerians in poverty.
Are within, not just poverty, multi-dimensional poverty. So for some, this is a harvest of prosperity for many. The elections are coming and they must bring the money. And that is why when, you know there's a time Chief Gani Fayemi of blessed memory was campaigning. I witnessed it. And people were throwing away his flyer. That is the flyer they are going to eat. You see, so that is the electorate culture that we have in the nation. You'll be amazed that after the election, some people have bosses they never worked for in terms of having legitimate jobs to do. Maybe, okay, give me votes in that section, take this boss. If I win, it's your own. You see, different kinds of things flying around now.
Right.
And they were obvious during the primary. So we have a culture of manipulation right now, except we want to deny it. And how do we begin to deal with it? By becoming conscientious. I mean, we are talking of vote buying. Towards 2019 elections, a governor threatened that if foreign observers over-observe or unduly observe, they may go back in body bags. It's part of the desperation. What could have led to that? So it's a do-or-die affair. It shouldn't be, but it appears that it is.
So I am wondering, how do we get to this point of making our politics a do-or-die affair? How did we come to the point of monetizing our politics and also using poverty as a weapon? Because there are those who have still blamed, the elite as coming up with all of this, and it is being deliberately used as we speak, that they were deliberate in whatever we see playing out at this point. I wonder if you understand my question.
Yeah, it's a collapse of good governance, because when you look at the pillars of good governance, accountability is one, transparency is one. And when I say accountability now, let me bring it down to the management of our resources. If we have accountability, and of course you are a minister of petroleum resources, and NNPC, comes out to present zero remittance to Federation account, accountability says that person should not remain in office as a minister. Do we have that? So when people can just go into office, become so rich overnight, become so influential and things like that, you find that desperation. So good governance is yet to be established in the nation. And of course, that is, okay, what do you expect when we have lost trillions of naira to all theft? What will they do with that illegal resources? To manipulate the political arena. I have said it, the consultations going on now may be consultations of protecting my business interest. Okay, I'm an opinion leader in my community. You want to become president, you want to become governor. Promise me that my oil block will not be taken away from me. Promise me that my smuggling business will continue. You see, forget about what we hear, we stampede insecurity, we do this. We have the power block also, whose interests are paramount and override the interests of the people. But if you go to Section 14 of Nigerian Constitution 1999 amended, it says that sovereignty belongs to the people. So if the people wisely galvanize, it is a potent tool to restore good governance by saying, okay, let's go all out there and get a candidate that will uphold the motto of the country, which is unity and faith, peace and progress. So it's because when you talk about the market situation in politics, it's about demand and supply.
Right.
There are nations where you bring inducement and they beat you up and throw you out with your inducement.
Absolutely.
So, and if the supply is not matched with demand, then absolutely, you find them backtracking. And that should be why some may want to continue to create poverty. Because I don't know how much you want to give me now to give you my PVC. For what purpose? You see, and we have also been talking to some of the electorates. If a politician is coming to give you 10,000 naira, please divide that 10,000 naira with 365 days times 4. 4 years. And ask yourself
how
a
much
big
does
question.
It, absolutely.
Is your future
Worth
important to you? Nelson Mandela was in prison for 27 years to gain independence from apartheid for his nation. You see, those are resilient souls. So what change has it made in your life when you have been collecting the
10,000
stomach
naira,
infrastructure.
Has your
and
life
things like
has your
that.
life become any better?
Exactly.
But even for INEC now, you as a stakeholder, I believe you've earned that right to, in terms of confidence in the electoral system. So of course they bear the greatest mandates to ensure that the election is free and fair and credible to the letter. Do you express satisfaction now with the systems that INEC has put in place? So there is beavers, there are so many other modalities, innovations that we hope to see more of during this election. In this mandate to check all these excesses on the part of the electorate and the politicians, are you satisfied that this would be a very good showing for INEC?
With credible engagement of the system, I have trust in INEC. That is expecting that they will not compromise. Remember the Edo election.
Yes.
I mean, it played out. Even the Osun elections, though it's still in court, so I may not be able to comment so much on it. The expectation wasn't what came out by the power of incumbency. So, and if INEC wants to remain credible, they should engage. I mean, the amendment of the electoral laws, we commend this regime for that, has really helped. For example, the case of a political appointee who wants to actively participate in primaries, you must resign. It was implemented. And it's not just INEC. We have other law enforcement agencies that should support INEC working in synergy. And that is the big question now. How willing are they to support INEC? Because some matters won't go beyond allegations. Practically almost all the elections, we read when we before we started, depending mainly on electronic transmission of results, ballot boxes snatching. I still remember vividly a name during the 2019 election, Demola, in the Okota region of Lagos, that was caught with he was beaten to a pulp, and then those cases just fizzle away. We hardly see them coming to court, and that is why I am of the position that a society that has laws that are not implemented may be as bad as a society that has no laws. Because as we speak now, we understand that I think the president is just about to release money for the prosecution of sponsors of Boko Haram. About 72 days to election. So you find some high and mighty who have resources ready for the elections. And of course, look at what CBN is doing. That some are claiming they are targeting the politicians. Some have kept the money. That is in money, we bring out money. That anything money cannot achieve, it should lie low. And why don't we use this money to develop the country? Like people rejoice. There are countries where you don't even go on public holiday because of elections. You continue your work, you vote. In fact, you may not even know elections are holding, but here we are. It's a big carnival. And let me say this with all sense of decorum and respect, that if you look at the budget of politicking in Nigeria, it can solve a major problem if pulled together to focus on good governance. And listen to me, whether you are seeking elective office or you are an electorate, all of us are in this country. Kidnappers, in fact, they prefer to go for the big ones now. So the insecurity we are talking about, the bad economy we are talking about, will bounce back someday. Many of the members of the National Assembly may not be returning to office. So what happens? You go back to your constituency, and you run out of your constituency, whatever the case may be.
That's the case for a majority of them.
And there's a new trend
I like the latter part of that statement. You go back or you run out.
Even those who are running now, they say Jakpa. But there's a new concept on the way, Jakpada. Because countries of the world have their challenges.
Absolutely.
And they also profile on how to deliver maximally to their citizens. So the best thing that can happen to Nigeria, the country that has the largest deposit of proven gas in Africa, is to let prosperity be restored to this country. And when this is achieved, we rest. I was just, monitoring, and I understand now that we are aiming about 22,000 megawatts in 2023.
Yes.
All these promises and promises and promises. These things we have the resources. They are available.
Right. Now, let's quickly touch on this matter. There's been some systemic attacks on INEC facilities across the country in recent days. INEC has been, raising concerns with regards to that. The recent one in Imo, where the governor came out to say that it's looking political, so to speak, because there are some persons who have also come out there to say that elections wouldn't hold in that state and all of it. I'm wondering what you make of these attacks system by arsonists on INEC's facilities in recent days.
It further exposes the vulnerability of our legal system because it happened in Ogun State, simultaneously with Osun State. Yes. Now it's one of the eastern states, even Ebonyi before Imo State. Yes. And the question some of us ask is that, are those facilities so exposed? If they are important, when you talk about security, it should be more proactive than being reactive. I say it, for lawyers who go to the Supreme Court, you must pass through a section of Aso Villa. They're in the same region. You don't just drive in there anyhow. They profile you. You see, so we should have that level, if not at the platinum level, we should have a silver approach to securing the facilities of INEC, knowing that elections are coming. Intelligence reports should have shown, indicated that you need to be more vigilant now, because we are dealing with resources here. In the case of Ogun State, hundreds of PVCs were
destroyed.
You know what I mean? So it does not speak well. So there has to be a synergy. There has to be consequences. The Osun attack and Ogun State attack on INEC facilities, how many have been prosecuted? You know what I mean? If there are no consequences. And that's why I must mention a case that just came out in Kwara State of some guys who raped a lady to death.
Yesterday.
And some of them had to die by hanging.
Absolutely.
You see, when some potential criminals see that, die by hanging, they zip up. Laws must be implemented. God, when Adam breached the provisions of God in the Garden of Eden, God was not sentimental. He showed him the way out.
Yes.
Okay. And consequences. But here we are. If you monitor the news in recent times, you must have read about infractions at elections and everything. But how many people? And that's why I brought in that adage of asking a cat to monitor a tiger. When a tiger turns its face at the cat must run under the bed and be peeping from under the bed. So, and that is, we are pushing the rule of law to the background. The rule of law says no one is above the law.
Yes.
And when we come to that point, we begin to regulate our system to the point where NNPC cannot talk about zero remittance. Where nobody will come out to claim spending 100 billion to turn around moribund refineries. Where no accountant general will come out and be defending embezzling over 80 billion naira when the population of the world as at 16th of November 2022 stood at 8 billion. Somebody is embezzling 80 billion. So these are accountability. Accountability. So I cannot imagine, for instance, that North Korea decides to embrace democracy under their leader and somebody is buying votes. You know that man. You won't even think about it. So we need to reinvent our system. If not, we just be discussing these things and then the politicians will just say your own.
Right. We're in a crucial period too now, amidst these concerns with attacks on INEC's installations across the country now. PVCs also, said to be destroyed. Incidentally, PVCs are being collected across the country at the various local governments areas. For many observers, we're speaking earlier on that it's been, for some people, they say they pick their cards. But for many people, there's something wrong with the system. Feeling calls for more decentralization. INEC says it's working with a calendar. Eventually, the cards will be moved to the wards and back to the local government. But, you know, from it just happened, just started on Monday. But what exactly are you hoping to see now in terms of, you know, are you satisfied with the level of interest by the voters? And how do you hope this will translate on the D-Day?
You know, what I have seen, it's a very robust interest in voting in Nigeria. And that is what the elders mean by saying the oppressors, in a way, help the people to wake up. You see, but that is if they get their PVCs. But for as many that have their, and that's another issue in our country, why should it be difficult to have access to what you are entitled to legitimately? You see, we've done the BVN, we have different data banks that can help us. In fact, it took a group to go to court to say INEC must make this registration a continuous process. We should simplify processes. Why should people suffer to get PVC? Why should it be difficult to have access? But for those who have, please don't go to a nightclub on the eve of election. Many people are shouting now. It's after elections they will wake up. And please, if you want to put night vigil on the eve of election, make it an evening prayer session so that people can go home and sleep early and report at the polling booth.
Yes.
Because we will always be confronted that you cannot protest. The tool you have is election. And every 4 years, 4 years are foul. You know, 4 years longer.
Of course,
so
of course.
This time around, let's mobilize, vote your conscience. You know, Nigeria should be the third richest country in the world in terms of benefits for the citizens by virtue of our resources. So please, let's get active. And we wish the law enforcement agents the will and muzzle to confront the vote sellers and buyers. The laws are there.
Right.
You know, we've mentioned some of them. And it's not just about having laws, it's about implementing your
them.
laws.
All right, Jide Ologun, we say a big thank you to you for your contributions on the program this morning. We appreciate. Many
Thank you.
thanks again.
God bless Nigeria.
Amen.